She had every intention of returning it the next morning. That was 3 weeks ago. Every night since, the chief executive of a company worth $600 million has been falling asleep in a maintenance worker's jacket that smells like sawdust and soap, and a life she cannot stop thinking about. Before we find out what happened the night she finally gave it back, tell me in the comments what city you are watching from tonight so I can see how far this story travels. And if you have ever held on to something that belonged to someone else longer than you should have, because letting go of it meant letting go of them, hit that subscribe button, because this story is for you. The rain started without warning on a Tuesday evening in late October, the kind of Chicago rain that comes sideways and turns every street into a negotiation. Reese Maddox was locking the service entrance of the Langford building when he saw her standing at the curb, one hand holding a phone to her ear, the other trying to signal a car that was not coming. She was soaked through in under a minute. Her blazer, the kind that cost more than his monthly rent, was doing nothing against the wind, and she was shivering in the specific stubborn way of a woman who would rather freeze than admit she needed help. He did not think about it. That was the part that mattered, and the part she would think about most in the weeks that followed. He did not calculate. He did not weigh the cost. He pulled off his jacket, the old canvas work jacket he had worn for 6 years, the one with the frayed cuff and the small tear near the left pocket that he kept meaning to fix and never did, and he walked over and held it out to her without a word. She looked at him. She looked at the jacket. She looked at him again. "You will freeze," she said. "I run warm," he said. "And your car is not here yet." She took it. She put it on. The sleeves hung past her wrists, and the shoulders sat wide on her frame, and she looked, for one unguarded moment, like a woman wearing something that belonged to someone she trusted, which was strange, because she did not know his name. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. The car arrived. She got in. The door closed. He stood in the rain watching the taillights disappear and realized, about 4 seconds too late, that his jacket was in that car and he had no idea when he would see it again. That morning, 6 hours earlier, Reese had been making breakfast for his daughter Maya in the apartment on the south side while she sat on the counter stool in her school uniform drawing something she would not let him see. "What are you drawing?" he said. "A secret. Secrets do not have that many colors. Good secrets do." Maya was 7 years old, and she had her mother's stubbornness and her father's habit of answering questions with better questions. Her mother Dina had been a tailor, the kind who worked from home with a measuring tape around her neck and pins between her lips, and she had died when Maya was 4. The jacket Reese had just given to a stranger in the rain was one of the last things Dinah had altered before she got sick. She had reinforced the seams, patched the lining, and sewn a small pocket inside the left breast panel that nobody knew about except Reese, because she had put it there for him to carry a photograph of Maya, and he had carried one in it every day since. He did not think about any of that when he handed it over. He thought about it all night. Nadia Langford did not return the jacket on Wednesday. She told herself she forgot. She had meetings from 7 until 6, a board dinner at 8, and the kind of schedule that made forgetting things not only plausible, but expected. She hung it on the hook behind her office door, where her own coat usually went, and every time she reached for something she brushed the canvas with her fingers, and every time she brushed it, she smelled sawdust and soap, and something underneath that she could not name, but that her body apparently recognized as important, because her pulse shifted every single time. She did not return it on Thursday either, or Friday, or the following Monday. Each day she arrived at the building carrying a reason not to, and each reason was flimsier than the last, and by the second week, she had stopped pretending there was a reason at all. Nadia Langford was 37 years old, and she had built the Langford Group from a single commercial lease into a real estate portfolio that stretched across 6 states. She was precise, strategic, and famous among her staff for never making a decision she could not defend with data. The jacket was not a decision she could defend with data. The jacket was hanging behind her door, smelling like a man she had spoken to for approximately 40 seconds in the rain, and she was losing arguments with herself about it every night. At home, in the glass apartment overlooking the lake, she put it on. Not every night, but most nights. She wore it to the kitchen to make tea. She wore it on the balcony when the wind came off the water. She sat in it on the couch, with her knees pulled up, and read contracts she was not absorbing, because the collar was right there and the smell was right there, and the warmth of the lining, which held heat in a way that expensive coats never did, felt like being held by someone without the complication of actually being held. She found the hidden pocket on the 9th night. Her hand slid inside the left breast panel, and her fingers touched a small photograph, wallet-sized, slightly creased. A little girl, maybe 5 in the picture, laughing at something outside the frame, with eyes that looked exactly like the man's eyes. She turned it over. On the back, in a woman's handwriting, neat and small, 2 words. Our Maya. She put the photograph back. She did not remove it. She wore the jacket to bed that night, and did not sleep well, which she told herself was the coffee, and knew was not. Meanwhile, Reese went to work every morning without his jacket, and told himself the cold did not bother him, which was a lie his body contradicted every time the wind cut through his shirt on the walk from the train. He had one other jacket, a thin windbreaker that offered the structural protection of a suggestion, and he wore it without complaint, because complaining required an audience, and he had never been a man who performed his discomfort for other people. The building staff noticed. Earl at the security desk asked where the canvas jacket was. Reese said he had lent it to someone. Earl asked who. Reese said he was not sure, which was true in every way except the one that mattered, because he knew exactly who had it, and he thought about her wearing it approximately once every 90 minutes, which he considered an improvement over the first week, when it had been once every 30. Maya noticed too. "Where is the brown jacket?" she asked on a Saturday, drawing at the kitchen table in her pajamas. "I lent it to someone. The one Mom fixed." He looked at her. "Yeah," he said. Maya considered this with the judicial seriousness of a 7-year-old weighing evidence. "Is she nice?" she asked. He paused long enough that Maya looked up from her drawing and studied his face the way she studied everything, carefully and without mercy. "I do not know her," he said. "But you gave her Mom's jacket." He had no answer for that. Maya went back to her drawing, apparently satisfied that the silence itself was an answer, and Reese sat there drinking coffee that had gone cold and thinking that his daughter had, in 3 sentences, seen something he had been trying not to look at for 12 days. The problem with a $600 million company occupying the same building as the man whose jacket you are sleeping in is that the building is not large enough to contain the secret and not small enough to force the conversation. They passed each other 11 times in 2 weeks. Nadia counted, because counting was what she did when she could not control something, and this she could not control. She did not mean to count. She was a woman who tracked metrics for a living, and apparently her subconscious had decided to apply the methodology to hallway encounters with a man in a thin windbreaker who never once asked for his jacket back. He did not ask. Not once. Not by email, not through building management, not with a polite note left at the front desk. That was the part that undid her. Any other man would have asked. Any other man would have come to her office, politely, professionally, and said, "I believe you have my jacket." And the transaction would have been completed, and the tension would have been resolved, and she would have gone back to sleeping without sawdust in her sheets. But Rhys Maddox did not ask. Because Rhys Maddox was the kind of man who gave things away without expecting them back. And that particular quality, which she had never once encountered in the world she operated in, was the thing keeping her up at night. On the 12th day, they ended up in the same elevator. Not the freight elevator. The passenger one, which Rhys almost never used but had been forced into because a water main had burst on the 3rd floor and the stairs were flooded. The doors closed. 14 floors. Just the two of them. She was wearing a charcoal suit that fit her like it had been designed by someone who understood her body as architecture. He was wearing the windbreaker that fit him like an apology. The contrast between them was absurd, and neither of them acknowledged it. "How are you?" she said, which was a question she asked 100 people a day and had never meant less or more. "I am good," he said. "How are you?" She almost said fine. Instead she said, "I still have your jacket." The sentence landed in the elevator like a confession. It was the first time either of them had mentioned it since the night in the rain, and the way she said it, not apologetically, not casually, but with the specific weight of someone admitting something they had been carrying too long, changed the air between them so completely that when the doors opened on the 7th floor, neither of them moved. "I know," he said. "You are not going to ask for it back." It looked like it needed to be somewhere for a while. She looked at him. The doors began to close. He caught them with one hand, held them open, and waited. She walked out. He did not follow. The doors closed. She stood in the corridor for a long moment, breathing, and thought with absolute clarity that no man had ever said anything that romantic to her in her life. And he had done it in a sentence about a jacket. The office noticed. Of course, the office noticed. 300 people working in a building run by a woman who wore a maintenance worker's canvas jacket behind her closed office door. A jacket that smelled like a world she had never inhabited, but apparently could not stop visiting. Her assistant Clara saw it on the hook every morning and said nothing, the way good assistants do. Derek Haynes, the head of acquisitions, a man who had been circling Nadia's orbit for 2 years with the persistence of someone who confused proximity with chemistry, noticed that she had become distracted in ways that had nothing to do with work, and he began, in the careful way ambitious men do, to find out why. On day 15, something shifted. Nadia arrived at the office to find a single white dahlia on her desk. No card, no note, just a flower, placed there before 7, which meant it had been placed by someone with access to the building before business hours. She looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at the jacket on the hook behind her door. Then, she looked at the dahlia again. She found Rhys in the basement that afternoon, replacing a circuit breaker with the focused attention he brought to everything mechanical. She stood in the doorway and watched him work for a moment longer than was professionally appropriate, which by now had become something of a habit. "Did you leave a flower on my desk?" she asked. He did not look up. "What kind of flower?" "A white dahlia." He tightened something with a wrench. "My daughter says dahlias mean dignity and elegance. She has a book about it. She reads it the way other kids read about dinosaurs. That is not an answer." He looked up. "It was my daughter's idea," he said. She asked about the lady with the jacket. "I told her you were elegant." "She looked it up and left it at the front desk with your name on it this morning. I walked her to school after." He paused. "If it is inappropriate, I apologize." "She is 7, and she does not fully understand the concept of professional boundaries. Nadia stood in the doorway of the circuit room and felt something crack open inside her chest that she had been keeping sealed for a very long time. Not because of the flower. Because a 7-year-old girl she had never met had looked up the meaning of elegance in a book and chosen a dahlia and written her name on an envelope and delivered it before school because her father had described a stranger with a single word, and the word had been enough. She went back to her office and closed the door and sat there for 10 minutes without touching her phone or her laptop or the contract, waiting for her signature. Then she picked up the dahlia and held it against the collar of his jacket, the way you hold two things together to see if they belong. And they did. That Friday, Derek made his move, not toward Nadia directly, but through the architecture of the company. He filed a facilities review recommending a restructuring of the maintenance contracts, citing efficiency. The review, if approved, would eliminate Reese's position entirely. Not a firing, a restructuring. The kind of corporate decision that looks rational on paper and personal only if you know where to look. Nadia read the proposal on Saturday morning in her apartment, wearing the jacket, drinking coffee that had gone cold. She read it twice. Then she called Clara, who requested this review. Derek submitted it Thursday evening. Before or after the dahlia appeared on my desk. Clara paused. After, she said carefully. Nadia set the coffee down. She did not call Derek. She did not call HR. She sat in the jacket and looked at the dahlia, which was still alive in a glass of water on her kitchen counter, and she thought about a man who had handed her his jacket in the rain without a word and never asked for it back, and about a little girl who believed elegance could be communicated through a flower, and about a vice president who believed power could be maintained through a spreadsheet. Then she made a decision. Monday morning, Nadia walked into the executive meeting and shut down the facilities restructuring in a single sentence. She told the room that any proposal designed to remove a specific employee for personal reasons rather than operational ones would be treated as a governance violation, and that she was happy to discuss the distinction with anyone who found it unclear. She looked directly at Derek when she said it. He did not look away, but something behind his expression rearranged itself, the way furniture rearranges in an earthquake, everything still standing, but nothing in the same place. Derek resigned within the month. Not dramatically, quietly, the way men leave when they understand that the ground they were standing on was never as solid as they believed. He took nothing from the building that had not been given to him, and Nadia, to her credit, let him leave without making it worse than it already was. He took a position at a competing firm that valued the things he was good at, which were considerable, in a building where his particular blind spots would not be tested by a woman in a canvas jacket she had no professional reason to own. That same week, Reese found a note in his locker, handwritten, on personal stationery, not company letterhead. It said, "I would like to return your jacket. But I would like to do it in person. Friday, 7, the rooftop. If that is not appropriate, I understand. Just leave the jacket on my chair and I will pretend this note never existed." Nadia. He read it 4 times. He folded it and put it in the pocket of the windbreaker, the pocket where the pincushion usually sat, and went back to work. He replaced 2 light fixtures, repaired a bathroom lock, and serviced the freight elevator. And he did all of it with the note sitting against his chest like a second heartbeat. He called Miss Adele and asked if she could take Maya on Friday evening. Miss Adele, who had been waiting for this phone call for approximately 3 years, said yes before he finished the sentence. On Friday, at 6:45, Reese Maddox stood in front of his bathroom mirror in the apartment on the south side, wearing his only good shirt, which Maya had ironed for him because she said he pressed too hard and would burn it. She was sitting on the counter again, the same spot she always sat, studying him with the merciless attention of a child who had decided this evening mattered and was conducting a final inspection. "You look okay," she said. "Just okay." She tilted her head. "You look like someone who is about to do something important and is pretending he is not nervous." He looked at her. "That is very specific. I am an observant person." He crouched down. 3 squeezes of her hand. She squeezed back 4, which meant more, which was against the rules, which was exactly why she did it. "Dad." "Yeah." "Bring her flowers." "And not the cheap ones." He smiled. "Since when are you an expert on flowers?" Since Maya picked up the Dahlia book from the library, apparently, she had been reading it every night before bed, studying the meaning of each variety the way other children studied dinosaurs or planets, and she had already selected, without being asked, the exact arrangement she believed was appropriate for this particular occasion. "Loud ones," she said. "Pick the loud ones." The rooftop of the Langford building at 7 on a Friday in November is not a place designed for what was about to happen there. It is a mechanical deck, vac units and ventilation housings, and the low hum of systems that keep 300 people comfortable without any of them knowing. Reese knew every inch of it. He had serviced every unit, tightened every bolt, replaced every filter. This was his floor, in the way that the executive suite was hers, and there was something fitting about meeting here, on the border between their worlds rather than inside either one. Nadia was already there when he came through the access door. She was standing near the railing, the city behind her, wearing the jacket. His jacket. The one with the frayed cuff and the small tear near the left pocket, and the hidden pocket over her heart, where a photograph of his daughter had been sitting for 21 days. She turned when she heard the door, and for a moment neither of them said anything. The wind was cold, and the city was loud, and the distance between them was about 12 feet, and both of them understood that what happened in the next few minutes was going to change the shape of their lives in ways they could not undo. He was carrying flowers, dahlias, rust and gold, and a pink so deep it looked like it was blushing, the kind Maya had called the loud ones. He held them the way men hold flowers when they are not used to holding flowers, slightly away from his body, as though negotiating with an unfamiliar object. Nadia looked at the dahlias. She looked at him. She smiled, and it was the real one, the one that arrived before she could arrange it, and it stayed. "Those are very loud," she said. "My daughter picked them," he said. "She has opinions." Nadia laughed. It came out before she could stop it, the way real laughter always does, and it broke something open between them that had been building for 3 weeks behind closed doors and in elevator silences, and in the particular weight of a jacket that smelled like a life she wanted to understand. She reached up and began to take the jacket off. He watched her slide one arm free, then the other, and hold it out to him the way you hand back something that has meant more to you than the person who owns it will ever fully know. He did not take it. "Keep it," he said. She shook her head slowly. "It is yours." "It was my wife's," he said. "She altered it herself. She sewed a pocket inside the lining for a photograph of our daughter." He paused. "And I would like you to have it, because for 3 weeks you have been carrying my daughter next to your heart without knowing it, and I cannot think of a better reason to let someone keep a jacket." Nadia held the jacket in her hands like something that had just changed weight. She looked down at the left breast panel. She pressed her hand against it and felt the photograph underneath, the one she had found on the 9th night, the one she had looked at once and never removed. "I found it," she said quietly. I did not take it out. I thought about it every night. She looked up at him. Her eyes were bright in a way that had nothing to do with the city lights. Why did you give it to me that night? She asked. You did not know me. You did not know who I was. Reese looked at her for a long moment. You were cold, he said, and I did not care who you were. The sentence sat between them on that rooftop the way certain sentences sit, not because they are complicated, but because they are so simple that the simplicity itself becomes the weight. She was cold. He did not care who she was. Every calculation she had spent her career perfecting, every metric she had used to measure the value of people and decisions and outcomes, none of it had predicted this. A man who gave away something that mattered because a stranger was shivering, and who never asked for it back, and who was now standing on a rooftop with grocery store flowers and the steadiest eyes she had ever seen, telling her the truth as though it were the easiest thing in the world. She stepped forward and put the jacket back on. She buttoned it. She looked at him. Then, I am keeping it, she said. They stood on that rooftop for a long time after that, talking in the way people talk when they have stopped being careful. He told her about Dinah. Not the illness, not the ending, but the woman. The way she held pins between her lips and talked around them as though they were punctuation. The way she measured everything twice, and cut once, and never apologized for being precise. The way Maya had inherited her habit of studying things before committing to them, the long, evaluating look that preceded every decision. Nadia told him about the years since her own divorce, a marriage that had ended with a sigh rather than a fight, and about the specific loneliness of running a company where every person in every room wanted something from her and nobody wanted her. She told him that the first night she wore his jacket she had cried, not for any reason she could name, but because the weight of it on her shoulders had felt like being chosen by someone who did not need anything in return, and she had not experienced that in so long she had forgotten what it felt like. He did not promise her anything that night. She did not ask him to. They talked until the cold drove them inside, and he walked her to her car, and she drove home wearing his jacket, and he rode the train south wearing the thin windbreaker and the flowers she had given back to him because, she said, your daughter should see them, and your apartment probably needs something loud. Months passed. The kind of months that feel like years because everything inside them is new. Maya met Nadia on a Saturday at the flower market because Maya had decided that anyone her father trusted with her mother's jacket was someone she needed to evaluate personally, and the flower market was her territory. She walked Nadia through the dahlia section with the authority of a small professor, explaining which colors meant gratitude and which meant new beginnings, and which ones were just pretty and did not need a reason. Nadia listened with the same complete attention she gave to board presentations, and Maya, who could spot a performance at 30 paces, found nothing performed about it. She is okay, Maya told her father in the car afterward, as though delivering a formal assessment. She asks real questions. That was high praise, coming from the most serious 7-year-old in Chicago. Friday evenings became theirs. Not planned, not discussed, just established the way real things establish themselves. Nadia came to the apartment, the small one on the south side with the kitchen table that wobbled and the stove that needed convincing. She did not bring wine or gifts or the architecture of a woman trying to impress. She came as she was. She sat at the wobbling table and ate whatever Reese had cooked and listened to Maya explain the structural weaknesses of the birdhouse she was building at school and laughed the real laugh, the loud one, the one she never used in boardrooms, and every Friday the apartment felt less like it was missing someone and more like it was making room. One evening, while Maya was in bed and the kitchen was quiet, Nadia stood at the counter in the jacket, washing dishes she did not have to wash in an apartment that was not hers. And Reese leaned against the doorway and watched her the way he had watched her that first night in the rain, except this time there was no distance between them, and no confusion and no question that needed answering. "You know," he said, "you still have the photograph." She paused. Her hand inside the pocket. She touched it. "I know," she said. "It keeps me company." He crossed the kitchen. He stood behind her. He reached around and laid his hand flat over hers, over the pocket, over the photograph, and she leaned back against him and closed her eyes, and for a moment neither of them moved, because neither of them needed to. "Everything worth keeping," she said quietly, "in this jacket." "Yeah," he said, "everything. There is an apartment on the south side of Chicago, where a canvas jacket hangs on a hook by the front door. It has a frayed cuff and a small tear near the left pocket that has finally been mended, carefully, by a 7-year-old who learned to sew from a book her father gave her about a mother she barely remembers. The jacket smells different now. It smells like sawdust and soap, the way it always did, but underneath that, faintly, it smells like perfume that appears only on Fridays, and like dahlia stems, and like the kitchen of a home that has enough people in it again. Inside the left breast panel, in the pocket that nobody knows about except the people who matter, there is still a photograph. But there are two now, the original, creased and soft, a laughing girl. And behind it, a new one, taken at the flower market on a Saturday, slightly out of focus because Reese's hands were shaking and he did not want to admit it, of Maya standing between Nadia and a wall of rust-colored dahlias, holding one flower in each hand, grinning the way children grin when they have decided the world is briefly, perfectly, exactly as it should be. The jacket goes where they go. On the hook by the door on weekday mornings. Over Nadia's shoulders on the rooftop where she first gave it back and then decided to keep it. Around Maya's small frame on cold evenings at the market when she is choosing the loud ones. It is the most expensive thing Nadia Langford has ever worn, not because of what it cost, but because of what it carries. The hands of a woman who believed anything worth keeping was worth mending. The photograph of a child who grew up without her mother and turned out steady anyway. And the quiet, irreplaceable weight of being chosen by someone who gave away the last warm thing he owned because a stranger was cold and never once asked for it back. So let me ask you something tonight. Is there something in your life you have been holding on to that belongs to someone else, not because you forgot to return it, but because letting go of it means letting go of something you are not ready to lose? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every one. And if this story stayed with you, you know what to do. New stories every week.